Good morning, Gyen Rinpoche, and good morning, Katrina, and welcome to all the online participants. We're happy that you can join us this morning, and we'll begin with some preliminary prayers. I believe the link to those is in the chat box. To the teacher endowed, transcendent destroyer, the one that's gone, the foe destroyer, completely and fully aware, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, one gone to bliss, nor the world's supreme guide to beings to be tamed. Teacher of gods and humans, to you, the Buddha endowed, transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, Shakyamuni, I prostrate, make offering, and go for refuge. When, O supreme among humans, you were born on this earth, you paced seven strides and said, I am supreme in this world. To you who are wise, I bow. With pure bodies formed supremely fine, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain. Fame that blazes in the three worlds, winner the best, supreme guide, to you I bow. With the supreme signs, face like the spotless moon, color like gold, to you I bow. You are immaculate, the three worlds are not, incomparable wise one, to you I bow. Great compassionate protector, all-knowing teacher, field of merit and good qualities, vast as an ocean, to the Tathagata I bow. Through purity, freeing from attachment, through virtue, freeing from the lower realms. Unique, supreme, ultimate reality, to the Dharma that is peace I bow. Having freed themselves, showing the path to freedom too, well established in the trainings. The holy field endowed with good qualities, to the Sangha I bow. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind completely, this is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a mirage, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop, a dew, a bubble. A dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud, see conditioned things as such. Through this merit may sentient beings attain the state of all seeing, subdue the foe of faults, and be delivered from the ocean of cyclic existence, perturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, and death. This ground anointed with perfume, flowers strewn Mount Meru, four lands, sun and moon, imagined as a Buddha land and offered to you, may all beings enjoy this pure land. Venerable holy gurus, in the space of your truth body, from billowing clouds of your wisdom and love, let fall the rain of the profound and extensive Dharma, in whatever form is suitable for subduing sentient beings. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kamhiryatayami. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, by the merit I create by listening to the Dharma. I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, by the merit I create by listening to the Dharma. I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, by the merit I create by listening to the Dharma. I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings.
Oh yeah, dig song again.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Geshe Yeshe Thabkhe son les. 주주가 송도와 지대로 참으면 때름 나 지대를 빼는 송도와 지대를 빼나서 참으면 때름네 참으면 이렇게 뭐뭐 팁되네 괜찮아도 그 나보지 뭐뭐 팁되 나보지 나서 지다 참으면 때름 내스도 이내급내 급질라서 참으면 때름 로주 깨지 ram나세 로 깨지 식삼게링리아 네 두세와르나베 로데 깨지 식삼링리아 세와르 나와치그레소도 지들 세무메나 rum네 로주 깨지 ram나템바다 어디나시 스타디 빼자라 세무메나 rum제데 저데 라지 와베신제 소리아 남유행하라 샘데 망쳐와데 샘지 꿈로이나 르응아 쳐바니까 망쳐와데 티바 나군 미kyö 쳐데 그래서 진짜시다 근데 집에 메시 유급 뒤나네 뒤주 뒤나네 급급질이야 아니 로야 조베네시 라지줄이야 가르고 계획치 제고 삼사가 삼로 한가점 잘람나 베시다 삼삼 이거 어디 빼들어 야 이제서
So here from the teachings of the Master Shantideva, from his guide to the Bodhisattva's way of life, he gives this verse which says, it gives this example of just like as lightning illuminates the darkness of a cloudy night for just an instant, in the same way, by the power of Buddha, occasionally people's minds are momentarily inclined toward merit. So here, just in the way that if we could imagine like a dark night that's covered over with thick clouds, and in just for one instant, the flash of lightning kind of illuminates that. In just the same way, like our normal state of mind is inclined toward non-virtuous, afflictive kinds of things, and then our actions of body and speech follow after that. And so most of our intentions and actions are non-virtuous, sort of like this dark night. But there are times, occasionally, just like this flash of lightning, when our mind stream has this kind of positive intention, thinking, I need to do something virtuous, I need to do something positive. And so that kind of state of mind is something that is extremely rare, like an instant of lightning illuminating a very dark night.
대신도 성비와라 그래서 로저이 대신 산제 토이 알람난 지네 순남 로저 탕가죠 대신에 다가 내신가란 소리와 왜 산제다 산제지 두밤 야 chanju sem바데달레 최퇴네 이 바샤게 급급리아티 바샤세네 예 자와라 줘야다 개와 두개게 삼로 탕가점 와 이제 산제토 알람나서 시대 점르시세 이게 순남 로저 탕가 개와 자고베 순남 졸로데 한가레 삼로 깨지 또나시 유섬링은 좀 그래서 전다 가르쳐 버리시는 거라서 정말 명안에 다 대받으러 네 믿기야 돼 템포 유전도 여와디 하자 용용마도 되게 진짜인데 알아서 개와 상불해야다 대외 주대 용용 저 멤버랑에다 동해 주대 셈에 봐요 그래서 이 이제 다 돼서 봐 이거야 방에다 여야 해야다 이거 봐 좀 얘기 답리하게 봐도 그냥 그거를 송구야 송구도 와
So here, again, it is, as this verse says, giving this example of a flash of lightning illuminating a very dark night for just an instant. In the same way, sort of by the power of the Buddha, occasionally people's minds are momentarily inclined toward merit. So due to the sort of power of imprints awakening in our mind from previous contact with Buddhas and so forth, we have the kind of inclination to to make an effort to have a positive, virtuous intention. But compared to the kind of darkness of this long night, it's something that is like just an instant, just a moment, sort of just at the edge of possibility. So this is something that is a very short period. When we look at since beginningless time, we have been under the influence of our afflictive emotions and engaged in many negative actions. There's sort of countless non-virtues. They're inexhaustible almost. And yet there are these times, these brief moments when we turn toward virtue, when we have a kind of virtuous thought or make effort toward virtue. And we need to really try to take advantage of that, to use those moments and opportunities to increase our virtue.
Oh yeah. Today kewa nyamju ni la ta so ma de tin du. Oh ti in du ka so da. Oh ngara jo ikwe top chembo ta ne kewa nyamchu ju o yimbe inde tu ka tela so ke wa no. Ta ti bo pha ngar sa we ti bo ta ye ta. Ni kende la ya ti ko sa tu me so wa. Ni ti bo sa sa ba de ta ne pha me ba so ya thap shi le be ko de so ke wa da. Oh ti be ko de ne te le ya thap shi chou de ju de ka re se na. Chang ju ge sem ni bu de de so ke wa. Kun zu chang ju yi sem da. Dang dam chang ju yi sem ke wa da. Kun zu chang ju yi sem se de. San ye yi ku su sem je le ya chue de ge su ku se da. Su ji ku. Yu je le ya ngue su na ye ko de pa. Ni su ku ten ne chue song ge san ye de su ku se wa da.
Looks like it's frozen.
Yeah. And I also, his mic is fallen down. I'm wondering if we can get that put back. Oh, okay. Looks like it is. Yeah, yeah.
Kun zu sem ye se de wa. Je tham je ge ta tu tu ge ge ja ku se yuen de kun de ge. San je su ju ro che ne ne shen da le chue de ne ge ge. San je de le ya. Ni su ku se wa da. De la kun zu be ku. Chu gu de su ku si ni gu de wa. Su ji ku si de su gi na ba de ni tu je lo ngo sun je ju yu be ku de la su ku si. Chu gu si de te na su ju je. Pang ba da to be yuen de de la chu ku si. Oh ti du ka so. Oh te ne kun zu be ku. Sim je tham je ge ta tu tu ge ge ku se yuen de kun de je. Ni su gu na ba de ni chu ne be san je ge ku ban to ba sa ni sa be. Oh sem je ba ta. Kun zu sem je se. Oh ti yu ba ye na. Sim je tham je ge ta tu be che do san je ge ku ban to ba sa ni sa. Sim je shen be ta be shen je be chan ju sim ge ta be ye na. Ni ngar sa be ti ba pha ta ba ta. Aung be ti ba ti chun do be sa ba che chen che ba ti yu ko re song ga. Dang dam chan ju ge sem de ge ti ba ge sa ba de che ba ta wa ne pa ye de ya. Tong ba ge to be dang dam sem ge si ge ra. Oh ti ye de ya lo re song ga.
So here, as the next as the next verse says, thus virtue is perpetually ever so feeble, while the power of vice is great and extremely dreadful. If there were no spirit of perfect awakening, what other virtue would overcome it? So here, recognizing that really we are in a situation where our virtues, our merits are quite weak. And so we should, while we are thinking of this, make an effort to purify, to confess those negativities that we have accumulated in the past, and make an effort not to accumulate new non-virtues, to try to turn our mind toward the positive, toward the virtuous. And really, what is the supreme method for doing that? What is the best method? It is bodhicitta, this attitude of the mind of awakening, both conventional and ultimate bodhicitta. So here, conventional bodhicitta corresponds with the kind of resultant form body of a Buddha, that kind of body that is able to actually encounter other beings and teach them the Dharma, show show them this kind of a path. And so the desire to attain that sort of state, wherein we have the ability to actually fully benefit other sentient beings through teaching them the Dharma, this is the kind of aspiration of conventional bodhicitta. May I be able to attain that state of Buddhahood in which I have this kind of body where I can teach to others, this form body. As well, one is desiring to obtain the truth body. This corresponds really to ultimate bodhicitta in the sense that the truth body is those abandonments and realizations within the continuum of that being, although this doesn't have the capacity to teach to others. But recognizing that it is only the realization of emptiness that is able to eliminate all faults and develop all virtuous qualities, we give rise to this attitude of wanting to work within our own mind to try to cultivate that realization of emptiness and try to develop those sorts of positive attitudes. So this kind of mind of awakening, the mind of bodhicitta, both conventional and ultimate, is the best method. Yeah, Dixon. Yeah, Dixon.
Oh, yeah. Oh, did you? Oh, that and that car show us and Garazo. Tibangarsa, Tayeta. It's a delia, Tibatunja, Mayo and Tondalia. Agbesanji, Chanju, Semlia. Community case of Brisongora. Shembegicho, Shella, Chambata, Sawa. So I knew you. Chambata, Sawa, Ninjil Saver. Oh, Shelia, Pensim, Tawapan, Shella, Pensim Chaya. Oh, the case of Brisongora. Elitani Tibata Viore. Arisen Tiba Mancha, Arazo. You are Kandijilana, Simjation, me, Kiwalamben, and me choose what you don't draw your. Don't do Rabachina, could don't choose what you don't draw your. Or tea in the tail, Tibetan Tipasav Yordo. Shall I Sawachi, Socha, much in Tiba. Shall I never use Tiba Mamusa Yora, Manchate. You saw that Tibetago, Yona. Simjelia, never cheba teletenet, Tiba Yogi, Pensim Chambayena. Narsak Betiba to the Pa Chang. And it's in delay to Banyor Dugora. That be Shanchi Bechanju seems to Shambega Samlo. Raleigh Shank Kesha what's in it. Oh, Shan Simja Tamjag, Troop to Gig. Sanjay Kovan Toba Chao and Yabene, Samlo. Eh, shoot Chamberdo. So le Shank Kesha what's it. Shangy Tanda Tarshimba Troop to Gig. Like you could say, and then Kundenji Kansachi Mauban and Jurachagi someday. There's some pay, you do Chimburwa. Or Teletan and it with Ayora. Laranzo Tinashi Samlu Tegura. Nangashu get the Kigmar, the all me. Joanne, Joa, Kazayana collection. Tarduk made Simja Tamjag to Tungi, Kunsenji. Yende Kundenji Kansachi Chagi some. Yet on the Tanda can not rene Pangi some. Yende not rene Tugi some. Sanjay Kovan Tobashi to be somewhere. It was Mabudagiora. Kada se tiba se simjen tene sagiosa simjen la pension chambane tiba ta yora oti do ngara su tiba ta gu yona champion chanju sem chamba nyinji o tezu le tene komba gumgina tiba ta grese ngar sabate ta chinje tiba kyunje ni nyor do ate gora yeso da ngara su nima re su mesenalia o tiring nyemu telenge simjen le Sawa never say Risukube Tibakaya Chigme Samsa. Simjela Pendo will cook up courage on a pendo to bring some Tayena. Any Miguel Pang beg so chebala so one Miguel Pang beg Gavatugre. This some Madame Gavatobe Yomare. Mima say now, come Mima say, Miss Sebe Diba Yomare Matoji. Me say Pangbe Yavayomarua. And a key drechina. Miseg Marwa, Kumakumare, Chinshek Marshe, Kugavamara. You could Tiba Masa and Matoshi. Yodreke, Pambe, Yawake to Umara. Naranzo and Yemanizi, so Chegmar, Chinshek Mar, Millet Sawachigomar. Imaginaya, Kulumena Pambaske Marwa, Comaje, the Chichen, the Chandahot, and the Keomarwa. Niri Mesinalia, or Getting Yamutilia, Simjela Cheveris, and the Vakachime. Chiniji Pemba to a show, Mamma Simja Tamja get her to Tungegi. You can say, and they couldn't Kibushil and Joshua some Diana. Tigama, Dieta, and it's also medicinale. Joandura, Tiba Paya the Kiwatwe. Or the Geshe Buddha Songdo.
So here again, we need to make an effort to purify those kinds of negativities that we have accumulated in the past and try to prevent ourselves from continuing to engage in such activities. And the most powerful way to do this is by generating this attitude, this mind of awakening that exchanges self and other, that really sees the aims and needs of others as more important than one's own. And so here, cultivating attitudes of love and compassion for others really is the most powerful way to purify those kinds of negativities that we have accumulated in the past. We are trying to abandon those kinds of negativities, and negativities are actions that are harmful to others, and try to benefit them as much as we can. So when we think about how it is that we accumulate negative actions, it is, well, we're all, even animals are sort of connected with a society. We accumulate negativities in relation to other beings generally. So we kill them or steal from them and so forth. And in order then to purify those kinds of negative actions, we should cultivate the opposite, cultivate this wish to benefit others, cultivate love and compassion for them. And so this, we are able to, generating those kinds of attitudes really reduces the harm that we cause to others and helps us generate this wish to benefit them. So this is dependent, again, on this kind of exchanging our own aims for those of others. And this is such an incredibly powerful mind. We have accumulated those negativities in relation to other beings. And by developing such a wish to help them, to fulfill their aims fully, to become a kind of being like a Buddha who is able to benefit other sentient beings because they have removed all fault and developed all good qualities. That kind of aspiration, that kind of wish is something that is going to purify many faults that we have accumulated. So again, it will also help us to reduce those kinds of negativities in the future, thinking about wishing to benefit others, having love and compassion for them. We will be less inclined to cause them harm. So here, every day in our life, we should have this kind of attitude and intention, thinking, I'm not going to harm others. I'm not going to do anything that is going to create negativities or cause harm to them. And I'm going to try to benefit them as much as I can. By setting this intention, we actually cultivate virtues. It may be the case that, say, like, even a dog might go through its day without killing or stealing or lying, but they're not accumulating those negativities, yet they're not accumulating virtue either, because we have to cultivate virtue. We have to make an intention to abandon those things. So by thinking, I'm not going to kill or steal or lie and so forth, that's how we actually generate virtues, rather than just happening not to do those things. So here, this kind of development of bodhicitta, this kind of attitude of wishing to become a Buddha, a being that is able to fully benefit others through having abandoned all faults and developed all good qualities, this is something that is incredibly powerful in removing our previous faults, purifying those previous faults, and preventing us, reducing those that we accumulate in the future. So this is something that is so important.
Oh, yeah. Oh, the thing I had to mention that some of the application, but Kundu Namju, our which is Songuda Sonjuna, the Chanju Semda, Tombani, Kumbu, Shistaba Songudoa, or the Indugarazo. Chanju Sem this samba sambuti retoa, Shambang Samuba. You went under Sagmare, Junchetoa. Tombani said they could do what Sawane, Pine, Yamot Sawane Pine, Tombani Togolo retoa. Oh, the Tombani Togolo got it under the Magazu share, Kanga Lebgirova, to share. Chanju Sem de Nivashagutoa. Yingarazu Samluna and the Samgra, Mesitondo Chile, Tandanga, Capto de Decire. Semje tamje ke trup tumge sanje kowan chide toba sho se tawase chila mato chi malam de chi deba mato samlo khorto ge maro o ti kya kare se mese tundu tele tanda che ko na de sha ge do ti maro ajo kyo ne kyo ka je ne ti chu so ye yo maro ajo kyo te kyo phe ru de mato sem de da pa sha te ne ba de ya ti ge ne ba ki che ro de ra ko kyo ma bo te ro Kame Bado, Yunche Yomar, Maras Kasa, Mi Sobuchin, Mille Shindu, Madachi, Simja Kura, Mabche Yomara. That's a Haring Musam Tangura. Mi Jansi, Kadambela Musungua. Mi Jansi, Haring Musam Tase. 제 망부여라 뒤주 망부여라 가서 가디 있는 지금 삼사 삼고라 마음번에 껴안에 껴안 밀을 랑제 셴백이 삼로 쇼치를 쇼치제 연대 장네 그것에 연대 군대 심지어는 개발해봐 연습 통계 증개봐도 저기 삼 근데 일이 매진날 껴나리 방법이나 뒤줄에 교지 삼사 연대 날에 깨배나 산제지 고반토베 교지 삼삼배나 네버 첨부 산제기 가서 최군적의 시축과 산제기 시축과 그래 찍받은 맛은 야기여라 근데 드네세 리베 저거로 마도 남사 쩨마 많이 버치 남사 술에 끼고 말와 아주 샘 쪄세 좋아 이거 전부 삼다 산제 고반토가 지금 삼사다 근데 로비야 가래 있는 뜻을 럽기 삼 단다 럽토고 말와 배치나 용도 안 가라서 해주셈 저기 지당은 이제 대시기 전주톤에 깨받아서 내매 산제 속의 전주초도 샘깨받아 신경 샘깨기 시작라 지당은 대시 저도 전주 샘벨라발라 르바신도 라버자스게 마도 전주 샘벨라바 강게 단다라 럽기 럽토기요 말어 전에도 거하대 그래서 르바신도 럽게시도 뜻이 망보시하는 게 등에봐도 지금 타도 매일 샤고라 대샤는 샘깨 토그래도 쩨마시 깨도 그래 아니 갈갈이 쩨마 많이 봐 딱바르시 나가슈기 삼로 공개 정소나 전주 샘 쩨마 많이 봐서 와라 나는 아주 쩨고라 우주견에 봐 삼로 다네 샘제 탐제도 사제 고바 또가 저게서 마오바나 끼와 같이 고나 밀류랑 집바 주든 서바소 이 야게 땅기 삼사 삼로야 고르고라 이 삼로 코네 소수 샘게 된도 내가 레그라 전대시도 그때 인지문지 삼다오라 전주기 샘세 어야 뒤에 뒤야 뭐 준줄래 뒤워대 송고도 기다참면은 로직해지는데 기다참면 나한테 로직해지람나 때문에 뒤 산제도 잘하나 지된 순남로도 탄가죠 이대 개와 냠주 니라 따스도 이대게 대답을 말아서 개와 냠춘죠 이거 똑치 못인데려 내배 뜨겁들라 송고라 이대 개와 냠주 니라다 이거 똑치 신도 메세바 예배 검들라 송고라 이대 개와 냠주 니라다 대보도 신메 얘네 쪽배 전주 셈멤버 계셔 관계 세진도 말줘서 그것에 연대 군대지 산제 유고바 토부대배 딱배 신집에 전주고 셈마도 여와 신다 관계 세진도 토고 말에 송고도 샹라 네버체네 디버사게도 샹라 펜베 셈 초도 교바티 창게나 디버 관계 따게레서 텔레 셈베 아니 디버다에 탑시 신다 요마소도 개치시도 되러 어디인데 내가 비티버 마사야 균제야 와 나르사바에 다두거라 요랍침부 셈베 삼루랍침부 담베네 나르사베 디버도 sabru 뇨르시 데부 뇨메고 바차두거라 가시 데부 뇨고나 데부 침부 뇨고야 돼 춘주 뇨마도 뇨메고 바차두거라 나르사게 디버다 진제 균제야 치도 전주 셈데 거래서 오라 동방에 또바데 디버 싸와네 봐 본시들라 동방에 또 그래 선거를 뜻한다 겁들이야 제제 소마를 단다 디페디 꾸주 전주기 셈지 소시거라 어디인데 나단당한 저 대대개와 냠중 일라다 디버도 신도 메세바 근데 속배 전주 셈에바 개생관계 시기는 말이 요로세 개와 신다 관계 시기는 또 말에 셴뱅게 삼로 딱배 신집에 전주기 셈 와. 내 단당하라도 셴라 펜스 잠바 자와 펜베셈마도 내가 메시바 근데 셈티 장게네 데 이버다에다 너 마음바는 산제 고바토야 타르바토야를 쏘고 파샤샤여도 이 예린 메시나를 삼당 그래서 것도 어야 되질라나
So here, this is really important that we think about in our daily lives. As His Holiness always stresses, these attitudes of bodhicitta and emptiness. This is really what we are trying to cultivate, this kind of attitude of bodhicitta, this kind, loving, beneficial attitude toward others. And emptiness, which is the wisdom that is able to really remove all of the faults from their root. So here, the teachings that we're giving are primarily on the view view of emptiness. But of course, we need both bodhicitta and emptiness in order to be able to get to the state of Buddhahood. But we might think like, wow, my life is so short. How am I possibly going to be able to do all of this within a single lifetime? There's no way that I can get to this state of Buddhahood. And this is really because we were thinking about it wrong. We need to have this long-reaching kind of view, this vast, expansive sort of intention, that this sort of lifetime that we have right now is just a small moment. We are going to take, we have in the past taken life after life, and we are going to continue to take rebirth after rebirth. There's no end to the continuum of a sentient being. So we need to think long term. We need to think that this is our ultimate goal, to become a fully enlightened Buddha who has removed all qualities and developed all, or removed all faults and developed all good qualities. But we are going to think that I need to take good rebirth after good rebirth. I need to get a kind of human life in order to be able to progress along this path and develop each of these qualities, remove each of these various faults in order to eventually be able to get to that state of Buddhahood. So this is like creating the foundation, building the foundation that will lead to Buddhahood. It's not as though we can immediately have an unfabricated kind of attitude of bodhicitta, this genuine altruistic desire to benefit others, but rather this is something that we have to train in, we have to develop in stages. So as we say, just as the Tathagatas of the past generated this supreme attitude of bodhicitta and in stages trained, so too I will follow that by training in stages. It's not that we immediately get to have all of these qualities and have all of these realizations, but rather we set this kind of long-term goal and make effort over a long time, which will eventually bear fruit. The Kadampa masters often speak about having this long-term kind of vision, that we're not thinking about something to just immediately get, but rather if by thinking in this way, we will eventually be able to reach that goal. We will eventually get there. And returning to this verse, again, virtue is perpetually ever so feeble, while the power of vice is great and extremely dreadful. So our virtues are very weak and our non-virtue is so strong. But really, we have the ability to eventually reverse that kind of state by over time training. We can't and as it continues, it says, if there were no spirit of perfect awakening, what other virtue would overcome it? So again, all of these negativities that we have accumulated in relation to other beings, really the strongest, most powerful method to eliminate those is this attitude of bodhicitta. It is the most powerful in terms of cutting the continuum of our engaging in non-virtue and making lighter and lighter those kinds of negativities that we have accumulated in the past, such that maybe the ripening result will be lesser, won't be quite as heavy. And so this attitude of bodhicitta helps us to remove our kind of harming others and the harms that we have done them in the past. And it is the view of emptiness that eventually removes from the root all of our faults. But this is, again, we need to set this kind of long-term goal. We are training in stages. And initially, we have to have a kind of fabricated sense of bodhicitta, of wishing to become a fully enlightened Buddha for the benefit of others. But eventually, this is something that will arise naturally. But we need to recognize that our view needs to be quite long.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that go tuition to the door. Assertion That tuition. Nina doing some good work. Or shall I talk about that? Sure. I want you to temper together. More than day, I want to get one. I don't do much aside. Yeah. Oh, that. Shall I talk about the pember to when you do it, Shara? Shall I? Never chena, so chena. Shall I to me, you some. Social never chena, social to me, you do. In a shall never chena, shall to me, you some. Do my race some good. Shall I to me, may go re, do you go around the chibare someday? The shall I talk about Bassity Uda. Shall I pember to us? Indian and do it. So I find it was Shambada, Zawada, Danium said, shall I pember to some. Oh, Jaju seems to do it, shall I pember to do. 동반이 또 두자 공동아 제 차도 드세 가가 시에 돈달이야 동반이 공교하라 가서 다음에 공교하라 쟤를 펜버트에 줄을 두고하라 근데 람 공마 토에 삼아 쟤를 펜버트에 돈다 두고하라 띵이나 뒤도래 띵이데 야체로 체로 땅거라 이등 알아둘래 시축서데 쟤를 내봐봐 동해 용그레 삼내 내봐봐 쟤를 동해 용네 뒤마르 쟤를 대화촌에 라데 치바레사 삼다 어저데 사토나 신시 소소르치데 개침부시부치 내가 지에 용매쇼베 대화 간거 용공게 어저데 사토 소르치 나와매게 지 요라가지 삼로 이매버 소고 요라 어저데 대원들레 동해 멘도바레사 소아디두 용게레 삼사 삼로 코네 내가 쟤는 뒤마레 삼사 삼로 코고 요라 그래서 샬라 차와 방바다 햄버트바니 나를 되베 인세 어디도 말아줘 메시 예리 메시 나려 샬라 찐네기 차와 방기 인사 햄버트기 인삼 띠짜체로 체로 따네 니 펜발이야 펜버 야치 좀 망부여라 차와 방발을 차와 싸와내 봐야 배 땐도 봐야 되니 야체로 줘요도 이봐도네 산제 고바도 veredo 나던가 들을 삼로 따내로 얘네 심지어 탐지기 더 중통계기 교교세 연대 군대기 기부시도 버 그러자기 삼 예체도 때 규칙이 주 산제 남게 냠용의 송바 주대 내들 터바체 소소 터바체 휴중기 과라바체 알레 틴데 송구도 틴데 와삼 예체를 삼중 예상을 마샤스 남바 산제 벌에 터바다 삼바 공바 숨요라 터바 장장을 되게 와마래 터 차소나 소소 삼로 땅고래 소소 삼로 땅나 소소 시럽디야 페게로와 산제가 송도 결론다감 개남게 세제타에 서신도 레과타라 나에 칼라와셰 쿠치메세 산제를 구베체베세 가가송데 인데 유지레 삼마삼송고라 이 뱅기마로 소소 시럽 페게마로와 소소 시럽 페게는 소소 삼로 땅 어디 레샤 레멘두세지 소소게 삼로 땅에 삼로 코르토바 소고로와 임바 맨도 틴데 송샤 인지레 세서도 샤샤나 니바 요마르와 소소 카데 이나사 나라줄레 시럽 요라 시럽 장바치기네 고 야부시에 통계게 시럽 요래 시바데 피다고 요래 어디인데 페이지 당신은 야리야 두고와 이랑 주제 누가 시시데 샤샤네 도르 두고와 어디인데 가서 그래 삼중기 고아시도 이나 메나사 소소 딱제시 심바자 어디 오늘 레샤사 네바니바치세 레샤 삼자 소소응원에 띵운에 레샤 데바 레샤 삼자 삼로 코르토바치고라 셰그도 송그도 인기레 삼삼 멤버치고라 삼중기 고아시고라 열때네 등운에 오늘도 껴침부레도와 차도도 껴침부레도와 나게도 껴침부레도와 샬라츠와 제도 껴침부레도와 사하고와 집을 디마라 나도 소소 냠솔랑고라 이건 로고라 근데 제우를 해서 거라 엄지전에 남산대 하고와 삼지 매우 처음 말와 니마샤라나시 멤버간가 남산으로 도와주요 말와 또 도마 매번은 아주 미게 올kom대요라 데데티고 칼리칼리 리베리베파 세고요라도 딘데 삼로 다시 태바다 삼바 콤바체네 여기서 연대 군대인지 심지어 탐제를 니리 매버터 타심버 통경게 산제제 고반 토버샤 예체도 아니죠 남배출이야 터바다 삼바고 베름지 주빈 삼 운세 때문에 삼버쇼서야 아딘데 만도체서
So here, if we really summarize the Dharma, it can be subsumed into these two things of non-harm and benefiting others as much as we can. And really, this attitude of not harming others should be based upon an understanding that others experience suffering. When someone harms us, does something to us, we experience suffering. And based upon that kind of knowledge, we should see that others are just the same. Rather than seeing them as like something inanimate, like rocks or stones or something that don't have any kind of feeling. We should recognize that, well, what is harmful to me, what hurts me, that is also the experience of others. And based upon that, we then develop a kind of love and compassion toward other sentient beings, those sorts of attitudes of wanting to benefit them and not cause them any sort of harm. Even the development of our understanding of emptiness is really to benefit others. It is through through this that we are able to eliminate our attitudes of hatred and anger and desire from their root and attain these higher paths that eventually allow us to become a Buddha. So the real foundation for getting to the state of Buddhahood is the foundation of non-harm and creating benefit to others. Normally we see ourselves as so important, like any little thing that causes us suffering, we don't want that. We want everything that will bring us happiness. And we kind of look at others as if they didn't have any sort of feelings or experience anything. But we should come to see that they are just like us. And therefore, on a day-to-day basis, we should really try to benefit others as much as we can and refrain from any kind of harm to them. And then we expand that more and more. We try to benefit them in greater and greater ways. We reduce the kind of harm that we cause to others until we removed it completely from the root, and we become the kind of being that is able to fully benefit other sentient beings, having removed all faults and developed all qualities. And so we should set a kind of attitude thinking that I'm going to listen to these teachings of the Buddha. The Buddha gave these teachings based upon his own experience. And based upon hearing these, I'm then going to really contemplate them for myself and meditate on them. As the Buddha, and we often hear quoted, the Buddha said that we shouldn't just accept his words out of having respect, but rather we should examine them as we would like gold and see, is this how it is or is it not like this? And so it's no benefit to us to just sort of hear the teachings and say, oh yeah, that's how it is, that's how it is. It doesn't develop our wisdom in any way. We are listening to the teachings in order to develop our own wisdom. And we have that kind of seed. We have the ability to develop our wisdom, but it involves thinking about things, really contemplating. We can do this for good and for bad. But when we hear the teachings, we should think about it for ourselves. Is this really how it is? Does this accord with reason? And based upon having gained an ascertainment and understanding through investigation and contemplation, we can then really engage in practice. So once we see, oh yes, anger is really faulty, pride is really bad, our desire is really harmful, that alone, that kind of understanding alone is not sufficient. We then have to actually take that up into practice. And so it's not as though this can happen immediately, sort of like the sun dispelling darkness and all of our faults are gone, but rather it is something that we develop over time. And so in order to be able to attain that state of Buddhahood, the state in which one has removed all faults, developed all good qualities, and benefits others without any sense of partiality, close or distance, one is we should set this kind of intention, thinking we're listening to these teachings for that purpose, for eventually being able to benefit other beings most fully by attaining the state of Buddhahood.
Oh yeah, that is so. Tangan to dele teva. Engine driver Joa said. Adi Garsoda. Salujang Ben Dollar training as you give up. You know, that's Tangan to this Salujang Ben de Geshe Yeshe Salu Sanjay Shingetale, Salujang Ban Drag Shingo Tindi, you such a signe. This is somebody don't. You know, that's engine driver Joa at the Chutongo, Chutonga, the Sanjay Tongo, Songora. But Timado came a song, Churua, in the schedule to one because Charity that the George is Yungdua. Oh, in the core, then did the number and the package with Yora. Engine Debra Joan should do that again, used to Yelengi to the Rakoran, Gurjiki to Chikora. Engine against the killer robot Chengenge, young Yelendi, Red Rongegi to the Debuti Rebalia, robot Chengenge to the Lenji against you that against you. And I sabi the Yuvinyeleva. Tipa Juniani, Yugumbuchagora. Tilia Sada, Chuda, Luda, to Genshin, go Sabinti, New Rachugura. Or teaching any new moment in the Asia came with one. Judah Gengi, the Yona di Jones of the Assanger, the Yona di Jones. Judah Gen di Yona, and Dribble the Jungle Asia. Judah Gen the Masona, Dribble the Yama Resongura. And the Judah Gen Sona, Dribble the Kena Samna, Magina Samna Kiangure. Judah Gen the Masona, Dribble the Kena Samna, 깨 요 말에서 이소가 다 지den지 제바보 유연에 꾸는게 와기로와 요함에 봐 꾸는게 어디 거래 딜레 우리 산식den이 제바보지 유연에 이게 삼로 따네니 근데 구이나 티네시 카셀 요한주 카셀 매브세 인데 소야 요 말에서 소소소 주단 깨요래 사소나 현다 가르삼마서 뛰고 말해 내부 라오메 봐 깨요 그래서 그게 마찬가지 깨요 말에서 근데 주단 깨는 게 깨는데 그 내부대 라오아치 수깨 깨요 말해 주단 깨 손도 거거나 라오메 봐 수레 동게시레 마토 지기 그 랑신지 수 라오아치는 거라 수깨요 게 뭐 거라 사고네야 라오아르치 수터야지 요 말아 신도를 지내고 내부 걸걸이 메도샤인 때네 신도 수깨는데 요즘 상황에서는 그 신도 중중제 체르체르로도 아마도 거라 라오아치는 수터야 깨요 말아 그래서 남바에는 땡진 레버런 중원데 야구 싸움 따게는 그다 깨교한 건 유로체제 콘 유로 내급실 소통 거라. 이인데 그 라완도 주여시와 말해. 유두 주단 깨라 뜨진 되는 그런 왕매도 왕매서 오라다. 그런 될 용구를 마도 그거랑 근데 라완아버지 소통해 깨요 말해. 진짜 신가라도 서부체 땡게를 지나 주단 깨 마보지 소리야 손지 대교로 마도 nga sumpuchi tewe sam rangwa rupche kashi niwa yondori samgudu wabe keyo mara yudan kenchi mandi na tozi mandi na utanda nala tozi mandi na namsa nagidu shikdu se lepsara nga zu de samlu kugu mara tabura shoche nga siru rangwa rupche sogu pasha sem pasha tanda chi nga chi yona shagdo yo mara songu ware kumbu nga la tenchen dene ne pa lo tagi ware 중에 대해서 주민은 그 중앙다 tin데 망보실 뜻인 되네 강사샤체 대고라 미차체 대고라 선부체 대고라 마도 라와체는 그 선부체 대게면도 나데 라와체 요요 말에서 풍부가라 때네 봐 딱봐 삼려야 당연히 왕게 샤과래 때네 딱봐 삼라 근데 소불레가 저스나 내가 지금서 셈게 내가 지금도 셈 콘도세데 기분도 세라 나 drugi 대구세 샤고도 류다 셈기 자파샤 코라 레가싱게 션다 수요 마라 이나 나라서 요나로 샤고도 잉에 소보레 잉에 소라레 게 진짜 삼비에세 삼겐데 그 소불레 로스 미 여기서는 소불레 로스 나치 용마라 소소 미르와탄다 소불 만드니 미치 요아요 마라 어디인데 그 엔진 데버리 좋아이나 라완도 주바요 마레
Is that my internet?
아요 마른 로아요 마레 유진지 상수는 꼭 러시아요라
Mm.
유진지 마차나 룽비하고 매는 로사 매는 로에게요 마라 우가데라 동바치 요사 로사시요라 어디인데 땡진 데버는 좋은 디여나 디쇼 유진 속은 디여나 아닌 데버도 깨운 거래서 일야 생기 깨나 삼삼 매기나 삼삼 제바보 챤다게 공주체요 말이 깨인 디바점 기지그래 직대나 작배 무슨도 작배 주단 깨 가르쳐내 끼도 디sam지레 마도 다 디잡리아 치지 깨 송게 치다 디고고도 디고고면도 송게 치기 삼을다네 요 말에 송게 와라 이 요함에 깨라 때네 좋아서래디 꾸는게 요함에 봐서 디여는데 디깨배신 디깨시데 미다가 도매께래 좋아서라 주단 깨 코라 깨고래 주단 깨 코라 깨네 그 요라체네 제부데 깨오르마도 챤다 셰바나시 주 딱바치샤 당부 주디 딱바치샤 네 되게 주 제비끼고 있을 때 요해요 말 남바잖아 고조가래 주치 당부 주디 딱바 마샤네 때 담말에 치고 때 담말 치고 때 담말 치고 누가 매는 되요 말해 남바에네 통미래 주 통미래 주된 통미래 가사 통미 땡게만 요래 당부 디네 중 디탈요 말을 세치 요 말이야 근데 그 미다 발자자 교를 때는 그 이제도 수용거라 딱바지 샤네 들을 교요 말에서 직샤 통마치샤 디탈 가게 요 말, 따뜻하죠. 근데 요 말. Zambulin did recharge and go south to where they are. Chidan Jiden come to Toma Yomar, you let Toma Yomar. What did without to make an attention was Abarama Chigi, you don't get Yomar Dasungua without to make a lesson was. You know, didn't dig it. And the Maribek engine do yesterday. Yeah, you don't get the Timu Mayan, but they would give a new engage squad matter. You don't get in the summer. Shindo 가서 구슈 사변시 때문에 현다 신도 직계 연구 말아. 그러나 팀무 많이 배 뉴버 연계의 교체를 때는 제부터 끼고 그래서 뉴베기 할 때는 중앙에서 계속을 중앙에 시행을 하래. 이 가리야. 근데 경아치 서울 정부에 또는 중앙을 때는 중앙에서 생기시. 이제 대번 중에 생긴한데 자, 이 가르에서 또 당부들을 규단 제벌을 중앙에 생기시 시행해. 한번 주자들이야 그러니까 딱보 매백견을 좋아서 다음에 백견을 좋아서 그래. 딱보 매백견을 좋아서는 되거든. 아버지도 강가 송경의 왕자 용서 연계식의 서제 예견이 좋아해서 근데 요 말해서 그 많이 백규단 견도 속선에 깨운 걸 봐도 요때 깬 시다 깬 숨다 깬 알레 좋아해. 이제 대버리 좋아서 그도 근데 삼로다이나 근데 지신 조시바데 남발람 산겔 마도지 현다거든요. 이제 대버리 좋아데 야부 치료받도 조신기 말해서 뭐마와 남바 산겔비나 가가게 땡지 대버리 좋아데 야부 샤시기 와 말해서 소에디 뛰어와. 이제 대버리 좋아라 랑원에 주바 용마 랑원에 템바 주바데 용구 말해서 남바 산겔 발에 뭐 템바 주바 켈레게 요라 어때서 만디버데 송거라 어때지 롭슬람나 원에 마시라 라모고체.
Okay, so here what we are talking about is dependent origination. And this, again, in the Rice Seedling Sutra here, the Buddha, based upon seeing a sprout and gives this kind of discourse, and really at the beginning, it says then, so the Blessed One, after seeing this rice seedling, spoke these words to the monks. Monks, he who sees dependent arising sees the Dharma. He who sees the Dharma sees the Buddha. And so then we go into this sort of back and forth between these venerable, or these various bodhisattvas. But here, this understanding of dependent origination implies that all is dependent upon causes and conditions, in the sense that those composite phenomena depend upon a substantial cause and coordinating conditions. Like in the case of a rice sprout, a rice seedling, this is something where you have the rice seed is the substantial cause, but you need to have all of the kind of coordinating conditions in order to actually bring about the fruition of or the coming about of that sprout. And so here, it again, following in the sutra, it says that because this exists, this occurs. Because this arose, this arises. This is called dependent arising. So here, this refutes the idea that, say, all phenomena are sort of created due to the thoughts of a divine creator, for example. When we see like a sprout come about, it's not as though it does so through the power of a divine creator's thoughts or something, but rather it arises due to various multiple causes and conditions. It's not as though that seed has the kind of a power to bring about its result with kind of autonomously, without depending upon anything else. Nor is that effect something that is independent, autonomous. It wasn't developed like, sort of by its own nature, but rather it depended upon many causes and conditions in order to bring that about. So if you have like a tree, it's not as though the tree by itself develops fruit and flowers, but rather there are many causes and conditions that lead to this tree growing and getting bigger and eventually producing fruit. And so this kind of transformation, looking at the way in which things transform and are dependently originated, we see that they do so without any sort of autonomy. Like we often feel while we are alive that we are sort of like, we have this autonomy, we're here, we have this kind of independence, But there are actually so many causes and conditions that are necessary for us to be alive. One little cause or condition goes wrong, and all of a sudden we're sick or we're dying. And so we have this sense of like an I, as if there were an I somehow in control of these aggregates, or like separate from the aggregates. If I set aside my form and my feelings and my consciousness and so forth, there would be some sort of I there. But really, we can't talk about the I independent of those various, the collection of the elements and the collection of our aggregates. It's something that is merely designated dependent upon those aggregates. We can't say like that I do anything independent of the body or mind. Like we say, I go when the body goes somewhere, or I am angry when our mind is experiencing some kind of anger. We can't speak of an I independent apart from all of those aggregates. If there were something like it is not possible for there to be something totally unconnected from those aggregates that is this I, even though we have a sense of there being such an I. And so this kind of autonomous, independent existence, we grasp at that, but really when we examine dependent origination, we see that that is not the case. And so the defining characteristics of dependent origination as they come through in this text of the Rice Seedling Sutra is first that the phenomena are produced from causes that are not a divine creator's thoughts. It's not as though a divine creator just makes everything due to their thoughts, nor is it the case that there's some sort of a permanent cause. This really creates all kinds of problems to think that there's something permanent. We fall into a kind of issue of, well, when was the start of that? Or was there any sort of start? Now, here the according to the Buddhists, they would say that there is things come about due to not the thoughts of a creator, but rather due to causes and conditions as they are renowned within the world. And so this means that they need to be multiple and impermanent causes. Now, when we talk about the sort of, can we posit some kind of a beginning, although we can say that there's like a beginning to this particular world, we can't point to the beginning of the universe as such. There's no way to trace the beginning of these multiple impermanent causes. But here, when it comes to production in terms of dependent origination, all things are produced from multiple and impermanent causes. And they're also produced from causes that have the capacity to give rise to a particular effect. It needs to be something that actually is a sort of uncommon, has the uncommon capacity to do that. And then this also, there are either sort of 3 defining characteristics or 5. Phenomena are also produced from existing causes and selfless causes. So here, when it comes to this understanding of dependent origination, this is unique to the Buddha in the sense that no non-Buddhists understand this dependent origination correctly. But even some of the kind of essentialist schools of the Buddhists have a sort of wrong understanding in the sense of they think that there is some kind of autonomous nature or something that exists that is really truly existent from its own side. And this is really refuted by a correct understanding of dependent origination.
Oh yeah, I'm going to do lotion. The rank is something is in Dolese to the to some lunation channel, the some do serra. Oh, without to make in dance. You are maybe can down, the way can sum down, can some lechon at the engine river joint, send you some dancers. Young Alec was at the love samba. You don't have a double maybe can it was stingy, can some ganga redora. Alec you are there. Duje, you send you to some best, and Duje send you to do. Send you, send you, Kabaku just send you what you said, this is your mother. Send you didn't them back over the air, Duje Tamje, Jigbe send you at the air, so this is song over the air. Send you to some but on dollar essay. You don't gain like tension, Deborah and Joa setting. You don't gain like tension, you don't drain ne. You didn't Gurgi Chechen, they don't drain and drive the Yongora, Jurachan. Mother Judici, you shape a job paper logate, Yelendi, Debushan Dachi, of Jakujayaki, Yomara. You don't gain and drain ne. You can't get Gurdo one again, Debuted theta, you tune, Yelete that tune any younger, Esongora, tension to us. In the jet in this law. ati nambaya tene takbe tendes ana korang ngo de kanderes ne anda bchine sobo sem sora dushi duji ngarazul yebe phungbunga sigra namju phungbunga le tene ane taase rashi tundu kar sigina yeda tis mingre ta shayorwa e dashi da chashela tene takbe tendes yora ngarazo phungbunga bu karula tene takbe kibusigdwa 풍부가 소보다 샘다 소와 두시 치여서 아니 미래되어라 미타기와래 아니 다시레 루레 소소민 가르네 티파타기도 풍부가 뭐 가루라 직차는 디치지레세 현달의 문제 카가 체였던 달까 따기와래 타녀 봐서라 타녀 라이 타녀 로이 타녀 현달의 카가 소소소 신했던 다 칸에 질랍나 구주였던 달이야 지dengi 타녀에서 추키쇼서 담부 민데 매네 개하고 말와 민데 소여서도자 민기 타녀도 소라데 추스지게 추슬라빈지라 그거잖아 지게 출라니 추스에데 따서라 다 추슬랍셔네 고 렌시어들 고도도 어때고 타녀에서 자의 타녀도 또베 타녀에서 니와라 자도게 타녀 부부가부 가루를 때네 di mire, di tare, di palare, di kiri saraptagro. Di milaya pumbunga bukarul tene, di trashire, di tindure spatagro. Tene tagbe tendesi ora. Pumbunga bukaru chile tene patagi ora. Ketsamle shagro mato, di taya tunda karre spika chichega rona raya chig raya yo mare. Di yona rangwene trubasere. Rangwe kewachi yona, 타녀 샤고 말에 고난 데레스 일반 주고 주세요 거라 이거 말은 뭐 강가라 강바르지네 강베치 받다 도다치 레레레레체 주고 주세요 말아 본다지 데 강바르 강베나 미데셔 다가 드부치야래 지den게 타녀 고란 차샤고 말도 이거 그래 강바 그래서네 지den게 타녀 다 미데서 바탄다 미두시라 고라 강베나 된단다 강바 가르쳐 되시라 지den게 타녀를 녀해요 막 다가 차샤로 강바나 때야 나던데 때 야게 예점게 첨부 예점게 쭉 줘봐래 자 때네 딱배 텐데서 지den게 타녀 여왕게 샤배 어디인데 대시거라 지들 야라 쏘남라 때네 신대 줘봐다 돌레스 된 도이시라 이 빨리 나래 와라 빨리 나다 그래서 니가 나 와라 빨리 나래 되래 니 담아대 쇼로 같이 와라 아지 자와 되게 심사 말아주고 나 생계지 풍불로 왕주 생계를 저 라와치 여 삼기도 와 어디요 말을 되게 심래 숨거라 내가 생겼음 내가 스도 라와를 십지요 사 내가에서 라와 십지요 내가 조서지 내 건조서 내 따당예다 가가 던다 매번 욕다 마부 속으라 나 라와 지게요 말해서 거라 다지 저와 되게 심견에 따지와 됐어 공부나리아 라와에 다지 현다지 여 삼사데 되게 심리 내가 깨게래서 거라 전에 다 누지 공부인데 동대서 공부가 되나 라와에 다디요 말에 동바리 다서 기란 삼반나시 나 삼자 라와지 여 삼반나시 템바리요 말에 다서 템바 말에서 나라주 통주나주데 템바 말에서 거라 다지 저와 되게 심견에 따지와 두치 뽕뽕 디똥된 딜레심제 요마이스 두치 뽕뽕 디 뽕뽕가 나라 다세 라와체 요마르 다서 거라 두치 뽕뽕 디똥데세 딜레심제 요마이세 심제다 트시다 tundu다 나다 지지 그저 가가 요마르세 나 가레스도 때네 딱 봐서면 샤고레서 거라 요마데 지다르 양라 소나물라 때네 신데 쥐바다 디신 뽕뽕 남 때네 군주 숨제 셔샤오세 배차로와 예매네 싱다스도 같이 들에 다 등사다 남주다 컴퓨터다 뜻수 샤나네 막부도와 남주레샤네 잘라 가지 여시나로 다다치 콜라담메르 레가제 마부요라 예솔레 때진데네 남주스바 딱부 대상을 남부샤오르마도 실로 박바테 마레 치세가 돈에 라오에 남주치요 마라 남주디레체 라오도 야페 대신게 치 주주세치요 마라 콜로 요래 빠빠 요래 들이 야자 요래 마신 내가 지금 가서 이렇게 내 땅에 미지에 요라 되게 주도 저라 야자 마다 아니 마밥 지오라 내 남도 밥송서라 남도 밥에가 미지 밥밥이 요라 이 맞는 봐요 말아 라완도 전에 와지 요마 근데 속발을 때네 내 마티 시도 남도 레스 남도 밥송 남도 프리소스 남도 지 또서 마신실이 껴셔도 남도 껴셔셔서라 마신디 남도 게 말아 내 텔 때네 고 아버송서 티샤기도 나 매르베스네 매 말에 숨거라 라완한테 요 말에 때네 딱왜 요래세 지들 양라 초 남라 때네 신대 줘봤다 지들 양라 망보지 속발을 때네 남도 스파타기도 컴퓨터나 내가 챙겨 망보지 와라 대졸 때네 컴퓨터 스파타기도 라완도 내가 챙겨 찍티나네 찍 조조스게 요 말아 딱는 쟤는 라야게 요 말아 라완도 두바지는데 쟤는 얘기 요구라 때네 딱 발라 쟤는 얘기 요구 말해 때네 딱 봤으면 내가 리사래 다시 빼서 셔야게 요 말해 지대 다녀요 완도 샤버 대삼지 팀버셔라 리버셔라 이슈테랑 그 쪼바래 라완도 두바지는데 딱 가그래서 쟤나 진디레샤스 조조스지 요구라 어디 이요 말이 이나 때네 딱 봤으면 샤버에 숨거라 지들 양라 초 남라사나 다 다시 라완데 메나 매르베서 매 말다세 지들 양라 초 남라 때네 신대 주버다 대신 풍부 남 때네 군습 심전 셔자오세 때네 딱 봤으면 샤고레세 때네 딱 봤으면 자와 치투고요래 강사된 누구요래 대기요래 대기래 개와서요래 대버서요래 자와 제바 생이사와 샤고레서라 소복에 레가레 체스나 다디 자와 치기도 세래 와 심바키 마지죠 다디 기부도 기부도 세때 남샤테 삼지 심바레 때네 딱 봤으면 샤고레 초탐때 어디 순거라 어디 줄라 야 뒤지수나
So then picking up in the text, and this is on page 63. So here it says, my view is as follows. So the Rice Seedling Sutra cited earlier states that the definition of the dependent arising of composite phenomena is production from 5 or 3 conditions. So again, such as multiple and impermanent conditions, conditions that have a capacity for production and no production from a divine creator's will. Again, when it comes to composite phenomena, they are dependently originated in the sense of having this kind of definition, or they have these characteristics, not that they are inherently existent, but having the characteristics of not being created by a divine creator's will, being created from multiple impermanent causes, being created from causes that have the capacity to generate such an effect, and existent causes and selfless causes. So here then, continuing with a quotation from a sutra, it says, just as one speaks of a chariot in dependence upon the collection of parts, so we use the convention living beings in dependence upon the aggregates. So here, we have a kind of like continuum of these aggregates and independence upon this collection of our form and feelings, consciousness, discrimination, compositional factors. We designate a person. So, and on the basis of, a collection of aggregates, we say, oh, that's Tashi, oh, that's Tundrup, whoever it may be. But when we search within those aggregates for the thing so designated, it can't be found. But yet within the world, we are able to like identify and differentiate things like, oh, this is a house, or oh, Tashi is at home, or whatever it may be, using these conventions. By using the kind of conventions, and when we talk about conventions, we can have those sorts of words, the sound, and then the thought that is able to identify and understand things within the world, like saying this is an ox, or this is a vase, or whatever it may be. But beyond things being merely dependently designated, if you try to search for the thing so designated, try to find that kind of essence, then you can't actually find it. So we need to be satisfied with just that level of dependent kind of existence. So there's no, if things existed autonomously or from their own side, had that kind of objective existence as that thing, we wouldn't need to designate, oh, this is a house. There wouldn't need to be that kind of the parts or the mental designation or the causality. It would just exist from its own side. But yet there is not that kind of existence. And even though that kind of autonomous existence is not logical, is not tenable, we can still say within the world, like, oh, I'm here, or I'm within this house, I'm going this way. And that's the extent of existence. It's merely dependently designated, but everything functions within that. But when we think about the way in which we grasp at things as though they had some kind of autonomous, real existence, we hold this sense of an I, and then we have this sense of mine, and then it's like, oh, well, this is my side, oh, that's them, this is us, and so forth. And based upon those kinds of designations and holding to them so strongly, we get angry, we create all kinds of negative karma, and so forth. So there is no kind of autonomous existence, but merely something that is designated on the basis of, like, a person is designated on these 5 aggregates, like it says in this sutra verse. And this sutra here is available in both Pali and Sanskrit. And so when we talk about a chariot, and we could use more modern examples, this is designated independence upon a collection of parts. And so here, this is the level of dependent origination that really is applicable to all phenomena, and really what is unique to the Buddha's teachings. That, like, when we think about something like, we could use a modern example like a plane or a computer or something like that, these are merely designations that we put on a collection of parts that is not that thing. So we think of, like, a plane as something autonomous. Oh, that plane is flying, the plane is landing. But there's so many parts and components that are necessary for that. It needs to be someone flying that plane. The plane doesn't just do it by itself. But rather, we think of things as though they existed from their own side autonomously, when really they are just designated, merely designated upon a collection of parts. And although we are negating there being some kind of autonomous existence, if we think, well, is that thing then totally non-existent? Is it just utterly non-existent? No, it's something that is merely designated. We need to be satisfied with that level of merely designated, that things can function, phenomena can function within that mere kind of designation. So when we here, again, as it says, just as one speaks of a chariot in dependence upon collections of parts, so we use the convention, living beings, in dependence upon the aggregates. So here, there is a conventional existence, but it is a dependent designation. There isn't something that exists independent of our mentally designating.
Oh yeah, understood. 그 전에 랑게 덕시다서 셰 랑게 덕시다서도 덕시스도 민다사게 당부 차례게 시초라 될 덕시스라 가사를 지내 통선은 따르시나 따에 소부 통선은 어디 따르셔서 발라르셔서 대시르셔 둔루르셔 소부를 때는 망셔 따으라 가지고 고라에는 야 소화단 두시다가 지지기부도 메도스네 지지땡기도 지지세 그래서 시도를 때문에 딱 보여도 어디인데 랑게 닥시스 철시직 차네 아니 발로 딱 그러봐 가게 통해면 남과 동바실이야 니지르 니마르스 따요 말아 남부지 차량에 시지어래 될 때는 아니 니지르에서 따야 될 딱비 시스거라 딱 쳐서 근데 풍부가 보지 닥시래 강사대 딱비 쳐래 될 때는 딱비 쳐라 그것이 풍부가 보지 그것이 닥시래 रशीदी तेला तेने ताबे ताये तेरे और दक्षिदान दोगजेले तेने दोगजे सुदे जादा तोबे थान्यंगी दिरा रशी रेसे मेंगदेदा इचेसो दि रशी ओ냐 बे तोबा तेला दोगजे सेरा जादा थान्यंगी तेला दोगजे सेरा 아니 도제 자도게 थान्यले तेने 주베 텐데 숭바 남네세 단다 지다양라 소 남라스게 되게 때네 딱배 dakshila 때네 딱배 때리 송구도와 랑게 뭐데 때네 딱배 좀 샤오레스 어때서 치루바 샤기 말와 땅마들에 깨송다 깨가래 저어때서 치루바 샤고 말와 주단 깨 디버섬을 때네 좋아레스 샤고 말와 주단 깨 딜라 때네 좋아셔바 디삼비 좋아레스 샤고 말에 디삼마레 송게시 와레 되게 삼르타니 디고기 삼마도 Kora tende reto mare segra. Tende ko tende te namsha teniga tene roa bu kasa tende sumda teninga la so ba shete ta tene takbe ta shila tene takbe tende o tezu chiru ba sha shing mare so wara shagi wa mare tanda tende chiru ba namje te dar she ba ta te da ne tende ma ma yin se tende ma o tezu tende wa do chene tende ma ma yin se Agase chiso la tene kebare sene lava sambi tende se marwa tenje del se ko tenda tenlo chi tenda del ne keda kilo ti machi shin shi shewara takba la tene keda kilo ta tenda del ne yonda yolo she yo mare nang ba chene reta takba ine ko juro merwa juro mena ni drebu kadu che kadu maji keba me chawra kena keje ba yin ko maji na name maji ko ra oh Teta ne tende mawa mayinde, teta ki tukten jin jikten dee segora, tunge tenpe tepe ne lu longche la soba, zamni dee tabulu sha na tesu kanga segora. Teta ne tukten jin jikten dee nam rang da dangi chibe ju, rang da dangi chibe ju takpa chile tene kikire segora, chiso se chinendra. Jikten ji cheba boy na takpa chigi. Kulungi cheba le tene kikire se shegre mado midagwe kyu kyang le tene tanda nganzu ngu sumdu jikten di le tonde kyu da kete chibu le tene kyora sig marwa takwe kyu da takwe cheba boso shengi yana cheba bo shengi takwe cheba boso kyu lo yowa sudo samlu tane didi kuma chungwa so tardu takwa chambe chikwe gyule kyora debe shirise takwa gyule kyore dikare chami resaro tadar chana tenjin rebra jwa ma deni chirube tumbala mebe rari tumba tube wambu kechu so sheba ya teto o tendre samata yina ani tenjin nibudiro o chiruba la soba tezo sheba mayimba namba sangi ba tumba sangi chumdende chigu tumbe kechu reso o tendre shena ndikdo sere aya tipoti
So here, the Buddha indicates that a dependent arising is established in dependence on its basis of imputation and the imputation of terms and concepts. So we have something that is like the basis of imputation or the basis of designation. Like say, when we're going to think horse, we see the form of a horse or an ox or a person. And sometimes it's not the form that we designate on, but say our feelings or our consciousness, and we think I in relation to that particular basis. But there is something that appears to us. It's not like there's just like empty space and we then have this thought or this imputation, but rather it is on independence upon that basis of imputation, having a particular basis, that we impute terms and concepts. We give a name to something or a thought to something. And so that is the kind of level of dependent origination that we're really talking about here. There is this kind of connection, dependence of the dependent, the thing that is designated and that designating mind, the designating terms and concepts. And it is on this basis that the Buddha's teaching of dependent origination is really unique. Non-Buddhists do not know this meaning of dependent arising and are not proponents of it, for they assert that this world of true suffering is produced from a cause that is ultimately partless, permanent, and unitary, such as a permanent cause that has the same nature as its effect, or a cause that is the will of a permanent divine creator. So here, non-Buddhists don't even assert the kind of definitions of composite dependent origination, in the sense of they may assert some kind of a divine creator's will is the cause of the world, or something that is permanent, some sort of like a primary principle that acts as a permanent cause. Well, for Buddhists, to say something permanent is a cause is quite a logically fallible kind of a thing. It would either be producing its results all the time or never doing so. So refuting that, Buddhists again assert that there are those 3 or 5 types of dependent origination. But even Beyond that, this perspective of the basis of imputation and the imputing terms and concepts, that kind of level of dependent origination, from that perspective, non-Buddhist teachers are not proponents of dependent arising. This is not what non-Buddhists certainly think or understand.
Oh yeah. I did the Daria Gombo Lutu long Jara. The Daria Gombo Lutu Jigdel and Deber Tebales. The source in Jigdel and Deber was Sanje Chomdetela Teba Shora, Gombo Lutu. Ordinarily a Carson Dosina. Tunge Rangi Chebatas. Tunge Tembe to the new Jigdel Songora. Oh, nearly Lonjola so what this is Hamas or Tunge Rangi Chebatas. Rather Tangi Chiba Kulet and the Chevarese. Kutan Drebu Tangi Chiba Shagiwara. Nabalini Kutan Drebu Tangi Chiba Chiwama, Kutan Drebu or Tade and Gurape. Oh, Tunge Rangi Tangi Chiba Kulet and the Chevarese. Shangi Chedan Randa Tangi Tadebe. You Rangune to be Kushanletani Chevarese. And the 동해 랑게 제바다 셴게 제다 세들 공부를 중인구도 여기 개발 망치하게 셴게 제수 랑래 못하대바 셴게 줄랬더니 제바티 장절 샤그라 아 제종가 버때서나 랑은데 주베 규시할랬더니 제부 셴게 버때래 셴게 시그마도 규시할랬더니 제부 셴게 버때래 셴게 시그마래 이 가게 말에 송거라 Shenda Kevachana or Shenle Kyo Kaguri, Ranle Kyo Kaguri, Kyo Kaguri, Sudati Rachel, so what Tamja Kaguri is in this Suchi Yora. Oh, that Tamja Khan Digmari, Kyo Kayama, Ranguni to be Kyo Kaguri Mato, Kyo Kayamaris, Ranguni to be Taka Mato, Ta Yoris, Qua Yoris, Qua Mena Simjame, attitude. Oh, this Sunji Madrani Udo. Shenji che danse. Nige che su ta gida shenji niga se. Jiru bala soba te zu yore. Tade ta gide nyenin le teni chonso za ta gis che. Shenji shigin le teni chonso shenji she mado. Jitso la soba ta nyi shigba tila di she yo mare. Yumi ba ne toge de se. Yume ba dunga di. Ni jambi barwa. Yu ko mare se. Tambu rang shingi chonga de se. Oh, Tishiram. You may ban a token de se. Should get 10 and John or sauce. The Sanjay 10 and John Ade, the Zunal Madube so the Songua. I just shangy nigga cumulate your good conjure. Sanjay did Songo Mare, 10 and John somebody yesterday. Shanky de you shall let any kill some Shannon Madubes and there's someone Ranguni to a killing it or no. Temperature killing you or no. Tungi Rangi Cheba, temperature killing. She thought you said and yin and it, killing you or Rangi Cheba. Shangi Cheba, Ranguni to be Kushan and Cheba, Sarah. Nige Cheba, 2000 said Shangi Shechi Ora. You meet by the talking to us. Should get 10 and John sauce, Sanjay get 10 and John, 10 Deborah John. You don't get attention Deborah John. She don't do she let attention drainage on it. Then he talk about some John is on it. Tension Deborah John, you need to get on but she's. Tension Deborah John, Rango, Rawan to Tuba, Rangone Tuba, Rango to be Tomba is, this shape of the you need to get on but she's, Rangone Tuba, Rawan to Tuba, Ranshiki Tuba, Rango Tuba, Shala Rama Leba Tuba, what is it? You need to get on but she's. Mobu Rama, you may say, Yami Chuji sing it as. And that Mobu condition, Rama to be speaking to your mother. Yami Chuji sing it, Yamba Meba, Sanjay Chomde de Chuji, sing it as Jigba Meba, Jigmaguba. Oh, near the Lamna Diga, I some way next to the Mituba Chini Jibarjira, Shandaga Church, you go next to the Mituba Marese. Jigba maybe sing tata bonashi. Rangu de Trubayu, Rawan to Trubayu singing Ridala so what is a she gon get so sing it as Yami Chuji sing it as oh, dear. Ngobu Rawa Yue Min Shi Sedwa, Rawa to Truba Sigara, Rawin Truba, Ranshi Truba, Rangan Truba said to the Chibare, Rawa to Truba Yuba Min Shi, Yami Chuji Sengitas. As I did,
Mm.
Yogi Kaba Kachi Sunju, you are Umarixola, so what the Zuka de Sumbate, Mega get Tony the Sunguare, Tony Tama Marese. The son of Sumbe Tony the Tony Tamare, so to your. This was a tanti to Sorva. The son of Sumbe Tony Tamoyena, over Rawa Mevate, Rawa the Truba Mevate, Tony Gongiti Sunguto Adinalia. But in the anti Tamlutansa Dugadi. You choose your tombar she chera, Kare tombarase, Nobu Rawa Yue Meshi, Yami Chuji Sengitas, Tombanyitumbe Sengitas. Only a character Rawa to Truba Marese, or Tisondua, Tibato Chilam.
Mm. So, then again, here from this perspective, and non-Buddhist teachers are not proponents of dependent arising. So thus, it is entirely fitting to attribute the teaching of dependent arising to our teacher, the Buddha, the master of sages. And this is stated in Nagarjuna's Hymn to the World Transcendent, so his praise to the Buddha, where he says that dialecticians assert that suffering is created by itself, created by another, by both self and another, or that they have no cause at all. You have stated it to be dependent arising. So here, when we talk about suffering or sort of the world, the external environment, the beings within it, all of the various things that they enjoy and so forth, here, these various dialecticians assert that maybe things come from themselves, from a cause that is of the same nature as the result. But here, Buddhists would assert that that's not tenable. It's not logical for the cause and effect to be of the same nature, but rather the cause and effect need to be of a different nature. So something being created by itself is not tenable. And then for it to be created by another, this is something that is of a different nature, that is like in the sense of having its own kind of autonomous existence. Here, what is being refuted is not just production from a mere other, but rather the kind of production from a truly existent other, something that is inherently or autonomously established. This is the kind of production from another that is not accepted by particularly the Prasangikas. So here, it also is not the case that phenomena arise both from self and other. Like some Jains and others assert that there is some kind of, the coordinating conditions or the sort of other, and the self is the substantial cause. But this is not, again, an acceptable mode of production, because all of these involve the causes having some kind of inherent existence or autonomous existence. So, and then, or that they have no cause at all. So the Buddha has also refuted that things arise causelessly, like say in the case of those Charvakas who assert such. But rather, the Buddha, you have stated it to be dependent arising. So here, according to this praise for the Buddha, they're not in any of these categories of arising from any of the four extremes, in the sense of phenomena arising from some kind of truly existent, either itself or another. If it were the case that phenomena arose from another that were truly existent, it would be something that you could point to, that you could identify, say, this is that. But rather, all phenomena arise dependently, in the sense of being dependent on this process of designation. There's a basis of imputation or designation, and the designating terms and concepts. So there's no inherently existent phenomena, something that has that kind of autonomous or a real existence from its own side. Whatever it is, the Buddha has declared that it is dependently originated. And that which originates through dependence, this you maintain to be empty, that no independent entity exists. You, peerless one, proclaim it in a lion's roar. So whatever type of phenomena it is, the Buddha has said that it lacks that kind of independent existence. And here, this then indicates that when we're speaking about empty in these verses, it's really referring to that most subtle level of emptiness, not just understanding it in a more coarse kind of a form. And the Buddha proclaims this like a lion's roar in the way that he's totally fearless, because what he has realized and what he is declaring is in accordance with reality. If you have some kind of trepidation, or you aren't really sure that what you are saying is true or accords with reality, you might not be able to proclaim it like a lion's roar that kind of fear instills fear in all of those other animals. But rather, the Buddha declared that there was no independent existence, no autonomous existence, and thereby all phenomena are dependently originated.
Oh yeah. Oh, that it. Oh, that is now. That daily tanda de kasura. Over Rawa you mean she is and the wa. Yamichu is secretary. That it Tombani Summit was. And did Piggy Karsura. Unto them you. Geshe Thabkhe Midaba, Sache Thabkhe Tunga, Chu Thabkhe Ameba, Tomba Malan. Chu Thabkhe Ameba, young Ellie Deva Shivas. Our Kata Chage Shisongura. Or Tina and the Chu Thabkhe Dameba Singitoa. Chu Thabkhe Dameba say at the Karel Sungrasnity. Kansa Dame the Chigi Dame say, Kansa Dada Ibu Kansa say it. Rawatu to remember the Janjan Sigi Marta. Oh, Dikarsura. Rawatu to remember said. Di imbate Kawando Sintanga to Dikarsura. She gave an ala. She gave an ala. Love Papa Lave. She gave a la. The good Rawa Meba to Tenatane, you my insort. She gave an ala. The good Rawa, you made it Tenatane. Rawa to Truba Meba to let Tame Bas, should Tamja Tame Bas said. Should condition a ranget Danite, ranging water, Rawa to Truba Moyo Mares, or teach and a should Tamja Tame Bas, kill Chagger, Umatenju Hashanara. Oh. The good Ram about the Tenatani, your my she gave a sword, Papa. But the Dreba, she gave a Dreba, Lobe, dear, and Dawatra. In the shake out it. Tell a Taj Chawanese, Kashingovonam Dikadu Dreba Jagora. Tell a Taj Chawane, Kashingovonam Yashala, Rama Lebang or Shintes. They may want it, Dameba Ose. Shala Rama Lebang or Shinti Mebalia. Amebas, they may want it. Amel. They are Cheda Kansa gave a number new sons, and the tricky time with the Kansa. Rawadu Tribe, Tangi Mebatalet, Tames. So Rawadu Tribe, Tangi Mebata, Rawadu Tangi Mebata, Shagura. Anything she gave a Rebecca Dultiora. Tell a ranking order, Rashita. Ranking order, Rashita, Rawata, Yala Rama Leba, Shesha, kind but listen. There's a number by his order, so that chip by his order. Ranshiki Meba, Ranking Order Meba, Rawadu Truba Meba, Shala Rama Leba, Rawadu Truba. Oh, disorder. I think Deba Jadu Shala Rama Leba said, or Telekashia. Our Shell Rama Leba Senator, Tony Lela Shidara. You don't get it in the Raleba, just talk to us, Raleba talk to us. What Tima Richard, Kilia, Jerumush, the shake of the Shansi Chawanese. You Shella Rama Leba, so a years. You don't get Rama Leba Sero. The same matters. Come the Rama Leba said. Ramaleva, Christian Ramaleva, so I make this. Tanyagi Wangi Shabe Yaba, Jidebe Tanyagi, Shebashora, did it, Tanya Tanya, the Louis Tanya Yoba, the Tanya Be Shebala Shansi Chalas. They Wangi Shaba Mimbe, Rawas. And that Tanyagi Wangi Shaba Mimba Yabatala, Rawa Sigri Swari. Najun Dona Luba. Yan Jidenji Tanyaji Wangi Yingi Yise. Jidenji Tanyaji Wangi Shabu Wangi Yingi. Don't Baname. Tanyaji Wangi Shabu Maina, don't buy about it. Tanyaji Wangi Shabu Main, Tanyaji Wangi Pasha, Yuna. For him, I did Tanya Wangi Shabu, Yuna. Rawan to draw your mother. Rawan to Truba Chuna, Tanyaji Wangi Keshago Mother. Put a Rawan to Truba de Tiora. But the Tanyaji Wangi, Tanyabe Shebatella, Shashi Chala, they Wangi Shaba Mibe. Rawan, what did you call her? The Indico, she changed the Durkas so at the down, under the Shikabek of Soyeta, the soak of Soyeta, the Sokankachana, Rawan Meba said, Hanyaji Wangi Shaba Miba, Korangan when the two Yoba and Rawan to Yoba Sigura, Rangwina Yoba, Ranging Yoba, Rangshinki Yoba, Tutu to Yoba, Asu to Yoba, Jesu to Yoba Sichora. Rangwina Yona, Rawan to Trubachi Yona, Ache and Raya Yokore Sigurda. Rawan to Trubachi Yona, Kagimba as a teacher, Ravi Omara. He made it talk home, never was or Mel Marda, then a talk was on the shower, Sigura. The shake up so young Yoba, ancient Debra Joaka, then it don't bang it. Then it then I talk about it in your own lines. Then a dog was on the shower, you ever coach you water. Cheta review mare. Rawan to Truba Meva, ancient Debra Joaka, then it don't bang it to share. Rawina don't bang it to share. What into Tandanga Karshigurusna? Rawan to Madruba said the Shigeba of Soyeta, in Jebak of Soya, what is Shala Rama was a shande. Tanya Jawangi Shaba, maybe Yobala, Rawuni Sigura. Tanya Jawangi Shaba, maybe Yobata Rawuniva. Tanya Jawangi Shaba Yobatella, then a top Yoba. Or Tishulana.
So here, as it says then in this verse, that which originates through dependence, you maintain to be empty, that no independent entity exists, you, the peerless one, proclaimed in a lion's roar. So here, all again, as the Buddha has taught in what are often called the four sort of seals of Buddhism, that all compounded phenomena are impermanent. All contaminated phenomena are in the nature of suffering. And we can just put all phenomena are selfless, and nirvana is peace. Here, when it comes to the understanding of what it is for phenomena to be selfless, this is where there are different sort of interpretations of what that means. And as we see in the praise to the transcendent by Nagarjuna, it's referring to that which originates through dependence. This you maintain to be empty, that no independent entity exists. So here, when we're talking about what it is for phenomena to be selfless, is to lack that kind of autonomous, independent sort of a nature, this existence from their own side. When we examine the nature of phenomena, there is no sort of truly autonomously, inherently existent nature. And this is also, as it is stated in Aryadeva's 400 verses, that all these things have no autonomous nature. Therefore, they have no self. So selflessness here is referring to explicitly that lack of some kind of an autonomous nature. And here, there's sort of various kind of synonyms for this that come up in both the commentary to the 400 verses by Chandrakirti, and then also Jela Matsongapa's commentary to that particular passage. But here, where it refers to phenomena are all these things not having some kind of autonomous nature, this isn't just referring to them not being having a nature that is not dependent upon causes and conditions. But when it says that phenomena don't have this sort of own nature, intrinsic nature, something that is autonomous or that is not dependent upon others, it's not just referring to not being a kind of nature that is not dependent upon causes and conditions, but a sort of nature that would be independent from our designating, imputing mentally. So when we, again, with the conventions of thought and terms, we designate various phenomena, that is part of the dependent existence that they have. So to have an autonomous nature would be to not depend upon that process of designation, not being posited by designation. There's another sutra passage in which the Buddha talks about how all of this exists by mere convention. These phenomena are not autonomously, independently existent from their own side with that kind of solid or real existence. So here, when it says that which is not dependent, here referring to the verse in the praises by Nagarjuna here in the 400 verses, this is referring to, again, some kind of nature that exists from its own side in the sense of being independent of causes and conditions, but also independent of that sort of mental designation. And so if something has that kind of existence from its own side, the sort of autonomous existence, intrinsic existence, it is able to bear or withstand analysis, as in we could find something within that basis of designation we could point to and say, this is that phenomena. But because we're not able to find such a thing, it is merely dependently designated. And so again, this does not mean that phenomena are not existent, but rather that they are merely dependently designated. So there is another verse in which it is said that the Buddha, having taught what is dependently designated as empty, and that is itself the middle way. So when we're looking at what it means for phenomena to be selfless, to not have some kind of a self, this is made quite explicit in these various passages that is referring to that kind of autonomous nature. And autonomous is not just referring to not depending upon causes and conditions, but also being independent of that process of mental imputation, mental designation.
Oh yeah, that this one. What I don't get the Karshi Gurusena. That's on a song be over all you made it. Yamichu Sengi Chase, Tongbani, Sengi Chakon, somebody said Tongbani, round to Tibet Tombala Song Shasgora. Oh, this she get about oh, Tezuna song at a round you may said delicious. It Tanya Gewang Shaba Maimba, you round in Mebatilla, round to Meba Song Shas. Oh, this sort of Shenda Song to the Chibodish dose. Round to Meba, round in Meba, ranking women Meba, Shenda Ramaleba, Ralev Mabel, so the number is which to she given Revenalia, daughter. Oh, there's a Chibodishas that he can do some down church to some church in those. What did you?
So here, what I'm trying to get at is that in the various kind of sutras, as well as like this praise by Nagarjuna, when it's talking about emptiness, and emptiness is referring to phenomena not having that kind of independent or autonomous existence. There are many sort of synonyms for this, but it is we should understand this as not being a sort of autonomy that is independence from just causes and conditions, but that kind of autonomy, existence from its own side, existence intrinsically by means of its own characteristics, is referring to a kind of existence that is independent of our mentally designating, and so this is what is being negated in the sense of and describing emptiness, both here in these various sutras as well as in Aryadeva's 400 verses and Chandrakirti's commentary to it.
Oh yeah. Not the nation she dance. Umbulu de Salucha Ben Rebatella suggestion she done this in repetition in Udoa, the Tisuchebatina Sonjaso. Ale Mai Shale means it, that it Tamal Shesaswa. Ale Chigmare, Shale Chigmare se. Nida Chebu Tuleme, Nigale Chigmare. Chebabo, do my do Chebabon de Yordo. do takba yes, do you want to give a mato, Shanda Jujin Shanda Kayoma, Koran Tuzu Wangi, Ranshin Kiki Ungarese, do takba yes, this new Chukanga can get to Tuzu Wangi Ungarese. Yes, you are there. Do Chibutule means it. Do takba Wangi give a mares. If you want you saw means, want you la soba, you can chibo chibame. Ranshin le me, you means it. Ranshin le chomare, you may le chomare. Do that Kenyan Jubaya, Toma maybe to Chenas, do that Ken Chiki, Toma Yomares. Dine, you ten Sabachore, did all to tell your mother, Sarah. You did share your mother, Nambolia. And I need to some man and do with the one, Takasha, and did all as she matters. What do you have your mother? Takwaina? Takwan Jura Masters in Debu give you in the 2,000 Kiku, this Sarah. And the magic becomes in the 2,000 magic. Takwa de capture capture machine ko takwa do yo mara jua chi chi yora rebuki wada meji ko negosi sabashi legi yora ke takwa de yo mara oh tene ka sura yudan ke gen ju pa ya thoma me be tu chena yudan ke le ya ti thoma ke yo mara junga da ge shiru ke tension table junga shes e solu jambe de kapsu junga le junga de shege do ati tal shesa ndira o ti chilamna ya.
So then we have a quotation from Nagarjuna's verses on the Rice Seedling Sutra. So here there are various sort of types of commentaries, and this one is kind of in verse. And so he says then, nothing is produced from itself or from another, from both or from time. So here, again, going through the various kinds of causes that are posited by non-Buddhists, for example, time as like a permanent sort of principle that gives rise to all of the various phenomena within the universe. That, again, is not something that is possible to posit. To say that everything is produced from a divine creator, such as Ishvara, from a principal nature or without a cause. None of these are sort of acceptable. To assert that something is, say, developed or produced by a permanent cause, again, if something is permanent, there can't be a time in which it is giving rise to results and a time in which it is not giving rise to results. So it would have to be the case that it is always producing whatever result it is, or that it never could produce a result, because how can something that is permanent have different sort of stages or states? And so in arising from causes and conditions comes from beginningless time. Thus, you assert that external things arise in dependence on the 5 causes. So again, it is not possible to point to a beginning, like either a particular atom, say, tracing back the continuity of that. We can't find an original initial cause, but yet things arise from causes and conditions beginninglessly. And thereby, Buddhists assert that all things arise in dependence on these 5 causes.
Oh, yeah. And the name on the Casore. You get Cabato, she's really taught me that in the Huda. College. Umbani, she does not go Yawala so what is a Kangani Kago de Sera. Yawadas took that Trata Casala Soba, or Tezukanga Kago de Ese. The dish is Yora. Oh, young Kebangashi Sona. The Kanga Kago Mara, Rangwine to be Yawatan Kavata Tezuka. Rangwine to be Taka. Taka Marese, the dish is Yora. Oh, Tini Venane. Injungi Kawa, my imbe Basido. Engine Debar Junga Kawa de Kawangone Marese, the Sungura. Mambo just saw the she and the Kawasi Kawangone in a corner rang to Kawas Corese. The Engine Debar Junga Kawa de Kawanga Marese. I just don't go about that as an Engine Debar Junga Kawa de Kawangone Rese. Rangone to be Kawa Maramado, Kawasha could Esungura. The Kebe Shiba Medra needed to cover some and didn't do service. Tambu Uma, thank you, welcome the tension reverend Juma, like Kawada. Gaba so shebes, Matenju Lulia, Tenji Debra Joa to let Jawatan Gabala Soba, or the Rawan to Trubayo Maris Hershira. Matenju come the Tenji Debra Joa like Jawatan Gaba so shebe. Tinjungi Jawa de Jawa Tangi by Yenam Shenase, a Truakura. They like Jawa Tangi by my Jawa Tangi by my bada, Yimbe Kebe Sheba Medrani, etc. Su Tambu de Ne. Chutambude to Kama Mikyö Dorje Soji Sung La Shichele. Kama de Casera Kaju. Keba Kama Mikyö Dorje Sung Land and the Sung Shastra. Tenjun ne Dole Kenyan Debatam to Sung Bess. Tenjin Debar Joa said, Donalia Kenyan Debatam Joa to let Tenjun said Tenjin Debar Joa Sung Yoresa. Sung Bendini Nugutabu. Kewana Rangi Kuyin Jidena Kana Shitagba Teda take you in Gese Rashangi Teba Tale Kange Chibarwa Dejidebar Joa Jidena Juda Kadichi Keva Tungu in a Tina Shidemato Tilin Deba Shenda Kushio Mareser Rashangi Teba Muburma Namji Tute Tagbe Yunamdas Tale Kebere Shale Kebere Nigale Kebere Chiso Chebere Jidan Chebaba Cheber As a Kelly Maresera, Indigo. There was several temper in Lase. Tension temperature Kawashimete. Yila. Don't like Kawashimi, yes. Don't it don't like Kawakoran to your Maresegora, and to Tanya to Chisha Matoche. Don't like Kawashila Meva, ya. Jidanji Mone, Jidanji Tanya want to Chansura. Jidanji Mone, Tinjun like Yangada. You didn't measure coming in best. Jidanji Tonju Nanjuli Chene, Kawadan, Gabadan, Roadan, Walla Sobatazo, Shago Resever. Shango Kelly and Ba Chiches. Kawadan Gaba, you said the Shango Jidan Tonju Nanshi telling you, mother, young one to do your research. Jayan Chebana, Kawa Yuba, she came to a Shungu Capsule, Daliman, Shalmin, Messi, Tashi. Kawa Kagi or a draw the wall of Soba Kagi or a Nitikara Kagi or a Sena. Oh, the name. Yeah, Chebana, Kawa Yuba, she came to Soma Maimbe. Cheba Chene Kane, Kawa Nama Yuba, she touched Shine Meber and draw it in the Maresera. Shila Tambune, Kawa Meber, the Meber pass our Chever Mato. Yuba, she Meber Sesha, but in the Mares. Kawa Shimi, Kawa the Shila Meber in. Now I think you get your Mengelas. Now what's some layer? Deji Deberjo on the cheat all the assured and basic. It told the you are this. Deji Deberjo. Your Mengelas. Yangonella, Yawadanka, what mejas? And the Tenga, Yandamla Chebe, Tenga Kora de Kagurese, Tenga membership is in the Shishin Sugura. Yangola. Yawadanka, what meja, Jitanging or Tendig, Tendig, Tenga now on it. Jitembe Tonjulia, attention temperature, Yawadanka, what on it. Tribute Tenga and go now to the Tote Yardis. Tenga Jobani, Shala Tragbe, Jesus Sugar Sam, Tenga Shayate, Jigana Tragwa Sambi, Jesus Journey, love your Macedonian Tenga Yomareser. Oh, you are Chiam Matuga. Now I attended like Kenga Chia Charon. You were telling the two your martes, now I tell them that in the Chaya or Resa. Then a Namgati Petal and Namkati could Ranshin the Tomba Keke or Maris. Did you okay or Mar? In a down like you are to your Tinda, Teluta, and Yamata, we said that today. Mimbala Soba today called Dramadre, Koran Ranshin Keke or Mar, Mavere. No Lubur to Keke to deny your is. Now the room I said, Yana, you met Talanso now, Nanshi so Talanchi and Matuka, Talanso Chi and now Rosh. You met Talan, which is now you know, could you tune it on the Yora? The Dangle Tata Lambu when it take Yomara. In a now, Tata Lambu dan gave up and will sort the Toya or Tina Shiri or Tipa to Chituna.
Yeah.
뭐를
So here, then we get into this section dealing with a kind of slightly different assertions of various Tibetan masters. So some, when we say that production from the four extremes is refuted, then dependently arisen production is sort of what is left over. But then there's a question of whether that is actual production. So here, this gets into the assertion that a dependently arisen production is not actual production or not an actual production. So here, the Prasangika Madhyamaka system explains arising and ceasing with respect to dependent arising. That's the only way we can really talk about production. And so is dependently production, therefore genuine production? This question sort of arises. And so again, we've refuted the idea that there could be production from its own side, sort of some kind of autonomous, independent kind of production that would be from either of those four extremes. So what is left over is this kind of dependent origination. And is that dependently arisen production actual production? The kind of question arises. So the response to that will first begin with some of the assertions of the Kagyu masters. So on this question, some scholars assert production that is not genuine, and other scholars assert production that is genuine. I will say a little about the former position based mainly on the statements of the master Karmapa Mikyö Dorje, but on others as well. So this is mainly the idea of some of the Kagyu masters. And so they say that according to Karmapa Mikyö Dorje, when the Buddha states in the Rice Seedling Sutra that dependent arising is just these conditions, he points out that when such things as sprouts are produced, they arise from causes and conditions that are seen by and known to the world. He clearly indicates that a sprout does not arise from those causes postulated by Buddhist essentialist and non-Buddhist tenets. So it can't be a kind of production from any of those four extremes. Moreover, although in reality production is baseless, there's no sort of basis for that, it is existent from the perspective of the world. So from the perspective of the world, there is no other way than to posit causes and effects arising and ceasing. So therefore, scholars such as Karmapa Mikyö Dorje assert the perspective of others, that is worldly persons, that this dependent arising or dependently originated production exists for the perspective of the worldly. So, it is also the case that, furthermore, it is not the case that in existent productions, there's some kind of existent production that is then refuted through analysis, that on analysis becomes non-existent, for there was no production in the first place. However, this does not contradict the appearance of a dependently arisen production. So here he continues by saying that although in actuality there is no production or cessation, really truly existent production or cessation, there is an appearance of the dependent arising of production and cessation according to the perspective of worldly persons. This is mistaken production and cessation. Thus, positing a dependently arisen production and cessation is merely in compliance with what is commonly accepted by others. So there is no actual production, but production and cessation are merely posited in accordance with what is commonly accepted. So although production is not established at all, the appearance of production and cessation independent arising is nevertheless possible. It is analogous to the unchanging natural emptiness of the sky, in which, though there is nothing at all, it is still feasible for a great variety of things, such as the change in the light due to clouds, a dust storm, sunlight, or darkness to appear. So we have this sort of empty sky. There's nothing in it whatsoever, but due to various conditions, you can have certain appearances arise. Or likewise, a magician's horse, elephant, or other creation appears, even though there is no actual horse or other object existing at the site of the appearance. So it is feasible for anything, a horse or an elephant, for example, to appear. Oh, 거기면
건다.
Oh yeah.
Tende Jingo, Tatande Kebe Shisu Tavet Yuntin Sunguara. Tende Jingo, Nam Sanje, Sibola Tone Chia, Madruji Chia, Kelando Mejase. Shangor Nawa Samla, Unzu Tinjungi Jengaso, Nazo Rongo, Shangi Nanzu Nashijana, Tendela Ya, Tenjiberajo, Nawa and Damada Chaju order. Tandangula Sanje Sisula Tode can you amare Sungara. Ona ume kam dere kewa shimi ina se uma be kable uma tenjo kam delia kewa tsawana mebe ina tashi kewa gogba da kewa yang gogba ina mshina tedar hinde se kenga ka yesu ngora tashi kan rungi kewa de shembe kewa misibe kewa da tashi kewa niga yondamdo masha tangye do yang gogba ina se tashi kewa na mandu be kewa chi yo mare sungora 어디 인도에서 그 깨와대 다시날 되고 그래서 인도는 다시 깨와 까봐나시 지나 깨와야 까봐 인해서 담담도 요 말을 지나 깨와 다녀도 요 말에서 진짜 까봐 인해서 오늘 대조 그 깨와서 메저 감사 오늘 대저 레버 중에 깨와 탱교로 샤고 말으면서 탱교에 감들에 대조 인베 교생계 깨와서 주버 지나내서 tenju lutele tenjin debar jungé kewa yuwa tegi kewa yuwa su tumne digi marese tenjin debar jungé kewa te kewa regi yuwa marese kewa yuwa na rangu ne tube kewa yuwa kore te yuwa marese wada tenju yuwa kam dere tenju yinbe kyusengi kewa su tubar chena ne keba chinji lodo tube taso gyurese ne keba mengere keba chinji lore tenju yina kewa karsara mayinbe kyabkirese wada tenjungi kewa mende doos. Yete tenjungi kewa tsengi pana jona ne, ngwe mawe, tashi kanrugi tale kewa, tashi kanrugi kewa tsema tang ngwe la, tenga yinba, uma tengiwe luji ka ne, laya uma ba rangi, tenjungi tale kewa, tenga tetar yobar tana ne langji ji chudan drawar, 다시 네가 취지도 좋아야 한다대. 그러나 싫다다. 자다 관계 신장 취지도 좋아. 송소세. 내가 교진의 교환 고백 인중 뭐 다시 인중게 교진의 교환 이번은 노로예시. 우마베 깨베 하를 교환 고자. 근데 내가 제가 다시 어디 가래 어디 마음을 찾아서 한두 됩니다. 다시 땡가자 당에도 땡중게 땡가서 마오시서와네 님부 매제 마와네 뭐보대다라 대다라 이노시 어디 말로 샹데르 도베스 쳐와야시 땡중게 땡가서 랑루지 테베 줘봐 대다라네 우마베트자 전다 대송 거라 전다 대지라 안 발로션 패치 되리 삼도 대지 대바르 줘에 땡가셔야 돼 땡강원에 말해서 그래 다시 깨와까지 깨와야 까도래서 거라 제송가 말이지 다시 깨와 나를 깨와 되고 말해 라운에 두배 깨와이네 다게 생기 니가 규밀에 깨와 시부 까루시요 그래 이 까야 요 말해서 이 까그리 말에 깨와 까요 말아 안다 개반되기 시주잖아. 지다 교와야 까고래 송거라. 지다 교와 까고래. 지다 교와 마가나. 다기 요 말이 생기 요 말이 세네. 교와다 로와다 와 요 말이 파까. 야 라루게 땡지 데버 중아세야지 요슬람나. 내가 라주 통주 din나신 템바 임바디 동면되네. 라주 통주 나신디 요섬 다다 교와요 가봐요 로아요 세데 이 참아대 되어서 거라 이 강가 매가 속으로서 이나 나기 돈에 다 매신도 나기 삼사 어떻게 정수신구도 되려 이 다시 껴봐까 야 깨지 대버주에 껴야서는 랑부치 주의께보다 집을 랑부치 추나 진주고 살아 아니 랑부치 사야 사갈 파데 수데시야 또 버차리서라 어디 나시리세 어디 마 롭시체 로션에 되래 예배 송주 거 봤삼래 마도 단단히 가셔야 투에 내가 그래서 제정가 봐 시주도 원해 용구라.
Mm.
단대도 개발신 시주 된데서 야고 봤습니다. 오랑게 뒤뒤치라 아니 마 배제 로션을 되게서 우로이.
So here, just to remind ourselves that we are talking about the kind of assertions of other scholars right now, and the view of Tsongkhapa and the Prasangika Madhyamakas will come below. So here, picking up again with this view of certain other scholars like Karmapa Mikyö Dorje, to say that no dependently arisen phenomena can be established or asserted in accordance with a Buddha's way of seeing things, in that there's no, this is only to the perspective, continuing all the varieties of production and so forth of conventional phenomena are feasible only as mere appearances to worldly persons. This is their understanding. So again, this sort of qualm is raised. If production is without basis in the Madhyamaka system, just as the production from the four alternatives is refuted, isn't production also refuted? And so the kind of answer that they give is like, if you have, as there is no production other than production from the four alternatives, in this view, not only is the ultimate existence of production and production from the four alternatives refuted, but also their conventional existence is refuted. And so then the sort of qualm comes. Well, would one then say that the Madhyamakas do not even posit dependently arisen production and so forth? And so the answer given here is that in the Prasangika Madhyamaka system, if one were to establish production by reason of its being a dependent arising, you would incur the fault of giving a contradictory reason, which entails a wrong pervasion. They do not assert that dependently arisen production is actual production. If dependently arisen production were posited as genuine production, then the Prasangika Madhyamaka would incur the fault of first refuting the view of the essentialist that production and sensation are valid and genuine by reason of any of the four alternatives, and then in turn positing that there is real production and cessation by the reason of dependent arising. So here, according to this particular view, to refute all of the four alternatives of production and then to come back and say, well, there is production because it's dependently originated is sort of like an elephant's bath. He washes, so like an elephant goes and washes themselves off, and then while they're still sort of wet or damp, they go and they roll in the mud again. And so it's like, what was the point of that? So to have refuted all of these various alternatives, and then in turn, according to them, to come back and posit dependent origination as a reason for there to be some kind of production, is contradictory. So it is like, again, like an elephant's bath. These two views, real production from one of the four alternatives and dependently arisen production, are similar in that they are both bonds. It is like saying that whether one is bound by a golden chain or an iron chain, one is still bound by a chain. So this is the kind of refutation given by the view by other scholars. And again, we will get to Tsongkhapa's view below, so we shouldn't get confused by that. Oh, yeah.
And thank you again, Rinpoche, and thank you, Katrina, for your excellent translations. And for those of you watching online, we hope you'll join us again next Saturday, 8 p.m. Pacific time. 8 a.m., sorry, Pacific time. We'll finish with some prayers. May the spiritual teachers who lead me on the sacred path, and all spiritual friends who practice it, have long life. May I pacify completely all outer and inner hindrances. Grant such inspiration, I pray. May the lives of the venerable spiritual mentors be stable, and their virtuous actions spread in the 10 directions. May the light of Lobsang's teachings dispelling the darkness of the beings in the three worlds always increase. Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Nitayami Due to this merit, may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their sufferings. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore.
Thank you.